Gracias, Tania. Jocelyn y Tania son una de las ayudantes para el programa de Esperanza Project y hasta ahorita, si les preguntan, las tengo muy ocupadas. Por el momento, si por alguna razón una de ellas no le puede ayudar en su problema, igual me pueden mandar un mensaje a mí, a Arcelia, en el chat por privado o a Carolina, a Carolyn Mullen. Gracias. Ahora me toca a mí. Yo me llamo Arcelia, soy la artista en residencia con el Oxnard Performing Arts Center. Soy escritora, cineasta y me dedico a escribir historias, sean de ficción, documental, otras piezas donde puedo relatar las historias de los latinos, de las latinas, de cualquier edad, para ayudar a la comunidad a entender nuestras historias, nuestros obstáculos y la manera en que siempre seguimos adelante. Me da mucho orgullo y le doy muchas gracias a Carolyn por tenerme en este proyecto. Quisiera que nos continúen apoyando. Este proyecto sigue hasta mayo. Fue en parte fundado, nos dieron ayuda la organización California Arts Council y todavía ocupamos poquito más ayuda financiera, así que si pueden avisarle a sus amistades, si pueden pasar un día sin una bebidita o cualquier cosa que les gusta comprarse y apoyarnos con una donación, se los agradeceremos mucho. Ahora se la voy a pasar a nuestra moderadora de la tarde, a Kim Quinn.
Thank you, Arcelia. I am Kimberly Quinn, and I am with the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Ventura County, NAMI Ventura County. I am the program coordinator there. I came to NAMI after a career in journalism, in newspapers, writing, editing, and as a photographer. And I came to NAMI after having mental health challenges. So this is a topic that is close to my heart. I live it, I work in it, and every day I see how important this is, especially in this community, the Hispanic and Spanish-speaking community. NAMI Ventura County has been in Ventura County since 1981. We work primarily with education, support, and advocacy, both for people living with mental health conditions as well as their families. We offer Spanish language programs. We offer dual programs with interpreters. We recently this year, the program I want to highlight the most, we started a brand new program due to COVID. Our program is called Community Cares, or Cuidado entre la Comunidad. And it is focused on bringing mental health education to everyone, friends, family, people who may had a small problem and now is seeing that blossom. I just got the message yesterday that NAMI has updated their statistics. And as of this year, 1 in 3 people are living with anxiety or depression. That's huge. So I'm so excited to be here today and talking about it and to be your moderator. And I'm going to pass it on to Jessica, I believe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Roman. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am a mental health therapist at Interface Children and Family Services. Interface Children and Family Services is a nonprofit agency, one of the leading nonprofit agencies in Ventura County. And they were established in 1973. We have a wide range of programs, one of them including mental health, trauma treatment, human trafficking, domestic violence, child abuse prevention programs, a wide variety of programs here. And I am also bilingual in Spanish, so I provide mental health treatment to our families in both English or Spanish as necessary.
Gracias, Jessica. Ahora, si Liliana se puede introducir.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Liliana Manriquez. I work for MyCOP out of Ventura County, Mixteco Indígena Community Organizing Project. And currently I hold the position as coordinator for Proyecto Acceso. We work with families who have children with intellectual disabilities, find resources. And previously I was part of Curando el Alma, Healing the Soul. And that was a project with VCBH that focused on mental health issues within the indigenous community of Ventura County and finding traditional ways to help them ease the symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression. Just a small background on me. I identify as Chicana Indígena, born and raised in Oxnard. I have my bachelor's from Channel Islands University in psychology and my Master of Science from the University of Arizona with Mexican American Studies. And my entire focus for the last 12 years has been on mental health and cultural and traditional impacts within the Latino community and the pursuit of higher education.
Gracias, Liliana. Ahora sigue Talisa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Talisa Hale, and I am a school counselor at Vista Real Charter High School in Port Hueneme. I graduated from Cal Lutheran in 2015 with my MS in counseling and guidance, and I have been a counselor ever since. Very lucky and happy to do what I do. I've served as an elementary school counselor in Santa Barbara, California, as well as in Germany, which is kind of neat. I was an elementary school counselor for the military children on base in Germany. And then I moved back here and was a supervisor for a type of career center at the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, where I supported men who were in recovery and trying to get themselves back out into the community in a healthy way. And then I am now obviously a school counselor at Vista Real and have been here for about a year. Just for a little background knowledge, Vista Real is a charter school system that has 6 different locations in Ventura County. And we support students 14 to 24, all of the same, standards and whatnot of a traditional school, but it is an independent learning style. So it fits the lifestyle of some of our youth much more than traditional high school. So thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Gracias, Talisa. Ahora se lo pasamos a Marlene Barragán.
Hello. Also, I am so sorry. I didn't know that they were going to work on construction today. So if you hear anything, I am so sorry, like the one day, right? But hello, my name is Marlene Barragán. I go by Mar. I'm from One Step and Diversity Collective. And I've battled with depression and anxiety. Like, I honestly can't remember a time where I didn't. And growing up Latina, it impacted it a lot because it was never taken seriously. It was always like, oh no, that's just your excuse, you're lazy, But I'm really excited to be here. And in terms of pronouns, I don't have any specific pronouns. It's up to you as long as they are respectful. And yeah.
Gracias, Marlene. Ahora se lo pasamos a Genesis.
Hello, everybody. My name is Genesis. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a slam poet and a writer. I talk a lot about being, Chicanx, but I also talk a lot about being queer and how that might affect affects my mental health and all the intersections between these 3 things, because, identity in one form or the other might affect how you look at yourself depending on the standards of that community and of that identity and the stereotypes that come with it. So those are a lot of the things that I write about.
Gracias. Un recordatorio de que cuando hablemos tratemos de llevar el paso un poquito más despacio. yo misma me siento un poquito rara porque estoy tratando de ir despacio, pero es para poder ayudar a las intérpretes y como dijeron ellas, que los demás puedan captar toda la información. Así que gracias, Genesis. Ahora se lo pasamos a Kimberly para empezar la conversación.
All right, let's start talking. So I would love to start with Talisa. Talisa, can you set the stage for us? We really want to know what students are talking about, what they're asking for.
Yeah, so COVID-19 and moving into a virtual learning style has definitely changed the dynamic of school for our students. And very interestingly enough, both negatively and positively, I do have a lot of students speaking up much more in this kind of situation compared to being on ground in a normal in-person capacity. So students are coming to me with the basic needs such as food. Ms. Hale, can you help us find shelter? We have a pretty big homeless population at my school. Ms. Hale, can you help us get some socks? Can you help my family get a fan? It's really hot. So the basic needs that individuals need, but furthermore, a lot of our students are grieving and trying to figure out how to express that and are opening up in terms of, I feel weird, I'm losing motivation, I feel isolated, I miss coming to school, I felt comfortable, I felt seen, I felt heard. So it's kind of a big spectrum, but for the most part, they're being very vocal about just basic needs for health and hygiene and food, but also something new is the mental health support that they're asking for related to the motivation, anxiety, depression, and grief. So that's a very kind of broad example, but that would be the most, that I'm getting from students.
Sure. So what are they, in terms of what they're asking for, in emotional, social support, what are they getting versus what are they not getting right now?
So a lot of our students definitely, I would say, need therapy, and I am very lucky that we have such a great connection to Interface. Hi, Jessica. A lot of our students are able to go there who do have Medi-Cal, which is an absolute blessing, and we are so lucky to have Interface within our community. In terms of students who are not getting what they need, we definitely do have a group who either don't have insurance or are struggling with the idea of going to therapy, speaking their truth, exposing some of the struggles that they have. And a lot of that is related to the family norms and dynamics, of course. But I have to tell you, I feel very, very grateful to have some of these partnerships in the community because for the most part, through a lot of work and communication, we have been able to help our students with the various needs, the food, the water, all of that, the transportation. So it's an evolving, it's always, every day there is someone who is in need of something pretty significant and it takes some time to, get them those resources or the referral, but everyone's working really hard together. And I think that's really great to see how much we care for our youth and can provide for them as a team.
So do you see differences between students from different cultural backgrounds?
Absolutely. So I've I've been all over the world. The military exposed me to students and families from the Midwest, from California, from the East Coast, from the South. And their needs were very different from the needs of my students at Hope Elementary School in Santa Barbara, California, where a little more affluent, the families were able to afford the private therapist and, food served in the schools is of a higher quality and the school is never understaffed because they are paid well. Versus where I am working right now, there's obviously a need for financial assistance. I work in a very low income area. The attitudes or perceptions of therapy and mental health support are much different. At the same time, I would say that my population in Port Hueneme is much more willing to receive help once help is offered. So I think that that's really great, is they do, it might be hard to ask for help in my community, but at the very least they're accepting of it. So, but overall, I do see a difference in terms of health and safety in terms of police response to various areas when I have needed, to request a welfare check or request assistance. So there's so many differences. I am so grateful I've worked in all of them and have been able to expose myself to those different demographics, but this has been by far my favorite to support.
So in terms of our Latino community, what are those differences you're seeing between Latino students and their peers?
So our students, I do notice, are struggling a little bit more with grades. They are struggling a little bit more with behavioral issues, especially at this time. There is a lot of distraction. There's a lot of fear in the community, hugely because of the fact that I do notice my Latino, Latina, Latinx students are living with multiple people at one time, which makes it a little bit scarier when there's a pandemic and makes it harder to get food to support the family. And so a lot of our students of color are having to work, whereas before maybe they didn't have to. So I do notice some of those differences compared to some of the peers of other, ethnic backgrounds and whatnot.
Okay. So, you just mentioned having to work. We know that there are gender differences within Latino communities. How do you see the impact of those gender differences in the Latino teams you work with?
So a big, obviously having a kind of patriarchy type of dynamic within the family, I think the biggest thing that I see is the desire to keep the stories of the family members, the struggles, the pain within the home. And so oftentimes students come to school with behavioral, kind of differences, they're acting out, and that is how we are finding out that there's more to the story and they need support at home and all of that. So I would say the biggest barrier is just kind of that cultural assumption that we have to keep our pain, our struggles to ourselves. And that makes it hard to help some families. With that said, I do think the work, having especially our male students are right now working a tremendous amount, many of which are working over 12 hours. So we see a little bit of a difference between, a cis male, versus a cis female within the family, and who is more available to do schoolwork and who is not. So I would say those two are pretty big impacts in terms of the dynamic and gender roles.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to pull Liliana in. And Liliana, Talisa was just talking about gender, the differences between genders, but what are the challenges that you're seeing prevalent in immigrant communities?
Yeah, the community within Ventura County, because of the program that I'm in, working with Mixteco and Indigenous peoples, one of the biggest things has to be the language barrier. We struggle with finding Spanish interpreters, let alone finding interpreters that speak variante en Mixteco, or Purepecha, or Zapoteco, or Nahua. And so when you throw in the impact of language, it's definitely a big struggle, because our families come in and they honestly don't even understand, speak, or read Spanish. So then, we have to find different ways of communication within the indigenous Latino population. And when you kind of put them in umbrella, the next thing would probably have to be the actual access to resources. And when I say access to resources, like Talisa was saying, the basic needs, right? Where can they find a food pantry? Where can they find a free clinic? Who can they speak to at a school to talk about the needs of their children? Many of them are also currently struggling with access to technology, right? We are growing. We are growing with this need of internet, this need of an iPad, an iPhone, or devices. And that's a really big struggle within our migrant communities, is where are they going to get these resources to help them just gain at that level?
What do you think the impact is on, the mental health in these communities because of those challenges?
There is definitely a struggle with communication within families themselves. Students are the younger generations, children in schools, are struggling with telling their parents that right now these things are a necessity. And then parents are then challenged with, trying to find a way to get this for them.
Okay. I imagine that adds a lot of stress to everybody. So talking about that, I wanted to ask you about the generational differences in families. You were just talking about parents who maybe don't necessarily understand how necessary, these things are for our young people. So can you speak to that, the generational differences and the conflict that creates?
Yes. So generationally speaking, I view it in two different ways, right? We have the Latino community, the Chicano Hispanic community, and then we actually have the indigenous community. So from one part, the indigenous aspect, we have an entire generation that is actually growing bilingual, but instead of it being English and Spanish, it's being English and their indigenous language. So they're completely bypassing the Spanish language. And so in there is lying that miscommunication, and then of course their children are being acculturated and educated within the American system, and they are losing, well, not losing, I guess, there is a struggle to kind of keep like the indigenous aspect and the indigenous culture alive. And then when you think of it from like the Latino, Chicano, Hispanic perspective, depending on how you identify and where exactly you grow, you do have that like want of going to school, of finding your space or your place, of hoping that your family accepts you whenever you get or you find that space. And so there definitely is this generational pull to be with the times now, like we all have our introductions, how I identify my pronouns, and then this like explanation of mom, dad, this is how you can understand me, please.
Okay, great. So, and in all of that, what are the taboos that we're not talking about and families are talking about? I'm sure they're around religion, gender, schooling, technology, all of these things. What are the ones you see the most?
Definitely within genderizing. There is still a strong need to kind of stick with the whole, women or girls like learn how to cook and clean, and to kind of like put your foot down and say, hey, it's okay if my brother likes to play with dolls or wears, purple or pink, and keep that machismo out of growing up within that household. And no family wants to really admit it, but it's a continuous cycle and it is there. And so that kind of, those experiences kind of build you to the type of person that you want to become, right? So for example, I'll use myself as an example. Growing up, yes, I was the girl, and yes, I cooked and cleaned, but I was also that person that had that hard conversation with my parents and saying, I want to go to school at a university, and I don't want it to be here. I want to go, in the middle of the country. And just having that that really, really rough conversation is something that no parent wants to like ever admit maybe happened, or fall into that whole, oh my goodness, my child is growing to be an adult and they want to actually like talk to me. And I think that's something that gets the sooner you learn that you can communicate, the better things will be, right? We're talking about like different ways to help you manage your stress or your anxiety or your depression. I think that the Latino, Hispanic, Chicano, Indigenous community is definitely learning communication.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, along those lines, thank you for all that, by the way, and using yourself as an example. I personally feel like that's really important because we all come to this, because we've learned throughout our lives. So speaking of learning and lived experience, I want to invite Marlene to share her experience with what we're talking about today.
Wow, I have basically lived all of that. So I struggle with 2 generational gaps. My stepdad is actually my mom's 18 years, my mom's senior. So that's a whole gap. And he was very much like, women do this and that's what women are going to do. And there's no say and you can't change it. And so that came with a lot of, you're a girl, you can't talk unless we talk to you first. And it's really, really damaging because I get so terrified of middle-aged men. I can't properly talk to them. I start to stutter and I can't do it. And parents don't realize what they're doing to their children when they instill these habits. But when you're a woman, you really don't have a say in the Latino community, especially when you're more traditionally Mexican. It gets rougher and rougher as you go. Like, in my family, it was okay if the little boys hit the girls. Like, I got beat up multiple times by my little brother, who I'm 6 years older than, but it was okay because he believes that it's okay to hit women, And it's just really upsetting and saddening, but it's what we live through and it happens more often than not. And I was always the one that was willing to be like, hey, that's not okay. And in that terms, it really did make it so that I unfortunately got a really, really bad consequence from it, because I was like, hey, that's not okay. Like, why? I'm a girl. I don't want to do this. Like, I want to do what the boys do. And I rebelled really, really badly. And it came with a big price to pay. Like, I got kicked out at 16 because it was their way or the highway. And it's the truth for a lot of people, a lot of Latinos, whenever they want to express that they're part of the LGBTQ plus community, we get shut down. And for example, when I was struggling with my gender, my mom was like, boy or girl? And I said, well, I don't feel like either. And she said, no, boy or girl. And it's just one of the many struggles that, we have to face.
Right. So I'm just going to remind everybody to take a deep breath and kind of slow down for our poor interpreters are desperately doing an awesome job keeping up. Marlene, how did all of that affect your mental health?
I mean, I'm seriously depressed, but I think I'm funny. But like, it was really, really hard. I actually went to Vista Real here in Santa Paula, because my mental health got so bad. All I would do was sleep for 14 to 16 hours a day. I didn't want to do homework. I didn't want to do school. I didn't want to live. Being alive felt so draining. And it felt like the more I stayed alive, like I could feel me losing coins because I'm very introverted. So I could feel like me losing my coins in my bag instead of coins being added. And my mom, like, I wanted therapy. And my mom always said that therapy was for really, really weak people. And she was like, oh, therapy's for the weak. You don't go to therapy unless you're like weak or crazy, So I was diagnosed with depression when I was 12 years old. My mom refused to acknowledge it. She said, no, like the doctors don't know what they're talking about. And I started getting medication when I was 16, but that didn't matter. Like, it made it worse. I got more and more numb. Instead of feeling depressed, I felt nothing at all. And it was really hard because in the mix of this all, my stepdad was saying, oh, like, this is just an excuse for you not to want to clean the kitchen, for you not to want to do this. And it was always correlated back to gender specific things. And it was me avoiding it instead of actually being sad. And I finally had the courage to say, no, I'm sad, I'm depressed, this is real. I have suicidal thoughts, I need help. And they were like, you have suicidal thoughts, go kill yourself. And that was the response,
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to salute you for finding the courage to stand up and say, this is what I need. What do you wish you had gotten either early on or later on? What did you need and what do you wish you had gotten?
I needed my mom because my father left when I was very young. I don't know where he is, and I really did need my mom. Me and my mom are working on a relationship, and I found out that she was just as scared as anyone would be when you're, with someone like that. But I had really wished that I had just had someone who told me, no, depression is real, because everyone around me was like, oh, you're too young to be depressed. What do you know about, and it was like, you're too young. And I really wish that I had someone there who was like, no, it's okay, let it out. It's okay if you cry. It's okay if you have random panic attacks. This is just who you are because of how you've grown up. But I didn't get that until I was maybe 15 years old.
Were you getting any of that at school?
Oh, no, not
Okay.
until I got to high school. I had my own therapist that my mom didn't know about because she wouldn't allow it. So I had to sign this paper with Medi-Cal, and I had a therapist that I would go see almost every day. But that wasn't until high school, and that was after a teacher had noticed something. But when I was in elementary school, I was writing on my papers that I wanted to kill myself, and not once did a teacher say anything.
Okay. So how did you end up getting help? And what helped?
Yeah, I actually started attending a youth center in Fillmore, California. It's called One Step a la Vez. And I started going there. Well, it was for community service hours for high school. And upon just being there, I ended up meeting the executive director at the time, Lonnie K. English. And I joined Social Equality Club, and I saw her again. Oh, sorry. And I saw her again, and I told her a little bit about what was going on, and she was the first person who told me that everything that I was experiencing was not okay. And I was like, what do you mean it's not okay? I've been doing this forever. This is completely normal. And she took me under her wing, and she got me really into activism. That's actually kind of what helped me come out of my rut a little, was just doing a lot of activism. And that's how I got into advocacy for farm workers as well. But it was definitely one step a la vez. And I was also able to get therapy through them as well because of the coalition.
Fantastic.
For family harmony. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So can you talk to us a little bit about your successes and where you're at now?
Oh yeah, right now I'm going to Ventura College. I took the semester off because of the pandemic, and it hit me hard because I was actually kicked out during the pandemic. So I had to unfortunately finish up that semester of school and then take off the last fall semester. So I'm a sociology major. I want to be a college counselor because I'm a first generation college student. No one in my family has ever gone to college. And I'm also the only one out of all my siblings that was born in Mexico. So it kind of means a lot that I get to be the oldest and go to college and help them out. But I had no help, and that's why I want to be a counselor, because so many first gen students don't get what they need. And the only reason that I got that, it's because I was actively seeking all that out, because I knew that I didn't have anyone. So it was up to me, because I wanted to help my siblings out, because there's only a 4-year age difference between me and my little sister. So I was like, I'm gonna help her go to college. She's not gonna have to deal with what I dealt with. And I did a lot of advocacy for farm workers. I actually went on a mental health panel as well last year for Diversity Collective. And ever since I was 16, I've done so much activism that I can't even think about it. I'm so sorry. I've done so much. Oh gosh, I got the Diversity Collective Award for Community Service in 2018 from Diversity Collective. Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you for all you're doing. I love seeing young activists. I think it's so important, and you're not only the future, you're the now. So thank you for all you're doing. And
thank you.
So look forward to seeing where you go from here for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's move over to Jessica. Jessica, we just heard Marlene talk about, what she didn't get. So I'm wondering if you can talk about the challenges in getting services, either in, receiving them or finding them.
Yes, thank you. So all of our speakers already mentioned a lot of great points that are connected to the challenges in accessing resources. specifically related to mental health. So one of the biggest ones that we still have is stigma of going to therapy. And we've done a lot of, progress in decreasing the stigma. It's, now you see it in social media, you see it in movies, you see it on TV, but we still have this perceptions that mental health is not a positive thing. If you're seeking therapy, you're perceived in the Latino community specifically as being crazy. Like, why are you going to therapy? You don't need to talk to anyone. So the stigma and just being labeled as local or crazy, that really is a challenge for a lot of youth and adults as well in the Latino community. There's also shame associated with seeking services. And in Hispanic families, there's that secrecy culture. And Talisa, you talked about it earlier, where, we grow up to learn that everything that we experience stays in the family. So we don't share with outsiders. We don't share with anyone outside of our household. So in seeking services, a therapist is outside of your household. And you're breaking, the values that have been instilled in you as growing up in a Latino community. Another issue that I notice in families is that they don't have the awareness, either because of their educational levels, just their experiences lived. They don't recognize the symptoms of mental health. So some examples in my professional experience is I've had families, come to me and they say, well, I'm here because my child was referred by their school counselor, teacher, but I don't see anything, wrong in quotes with them. But here we are. So a child is presenting with depressive symptoms. The parent is not seeing those symptoms because you can't see something that you don't know of. You can't understand something that hasn't been taught to you. So a lot of the symptoms, if they're not being recognized in terms of depressive symptoms, parents usually refer to their kids as they're just lazy, or they just don't want to help out, or they're just trying to avoid working or helping the family, which brings me to the next point of the expectations of gender roles. Again, in the Latino family, especially in back in the time, you had children to help you, to help you in labor. So now we've progressed in that area as well, but we also see children as, once you're 18, you have to get a job and you have to start paying rent. And sometimes that's difficult for an 18-year-old. They're dealing with their identity. They're trying to see who they are in this world. What do they want to do? Like Liliana was saying, she wanted to go to, a community, an university, but outside of, her state. So it's a lot of stressors for youth. Another barrier that I do see in accessing services is language barriers. We have a shortage of Spanish-speaking therapists. The majority of our therapists are, only English speaking. We do need more therapists that are bilingual. We do have interpreters, but that's also very scarce. So that's also something that pulls families back from seeking services, even if they want to. Not being able to understand, the conversations and the documents and everything that goes into the therapy. There's also another stressor that I do notice, and it's regarding socioeconomic status. Some families don't have access to health insurance. And typically, if you don't have health insurance, you would have to pay out of pocket for private therapy. Therapy is expensive, and some families in the Latino community, if they don't have insurance, they have to make the decision. Do I use the $100 I have for therapy, or do I use it to provide the basic needs to my children, their food and their housing? So they have to make that decision of what do I do and how do I do this? again, going back a little bit to the gender roles, females, they're born into this, what we call Marianismo culture. And this is just they're taught to be strong and to, prioritize others. So when they're noticing, specifically females, when they're noticing that there's no money at home for me to go to therapy, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say that I'm feeling sad because I don't want to be a stressor or a burden to my parents. Another stressor or barrier that I do see in accessing services is the legal status of families in the Latino community. I hear this, I cannot tell you how many times. If I sign this documents agreeing to consenting to mental health services, is my status going to be disclosed? Are legal authorities going to be informed that I'm here? So there's that fear as well of being deported, being separated from the family due to the legal status of the parents. I think that's all I can think of at the moment. It's so many stressors, but again, we're making so much progress in that.
So how do you approach those challenges? Sorry, I totally lost that word there for a minute. Especially, when we're talking about the what's said here, what's done here stays here culture. How do you bridge that as a therapist?
So culture, the way that culture is defined is it defines who we are, what we do, and how we interact. So I try to bring that back to our families. And I try to say, I'm here to provide support for you. So how can I be of support for you? I like families, the expert, and I really like to incorporate their lived experience and, their background, their upbringing. Specifically when I'm working with youth, I like to incorporate the parents because a lot of that there's that disconnect, especially when we're talking about, like Merlin mentioned earlier, first generation youth, and then their parents who were born in, somewhere else in another country. So I try to incorporate their upbringing, their experiences. I ask them if there's anything. I myself am Mexican, so I am pretty familiar with the culture. I grew up in Mexico as well. So one of the things that I try to be open with them, and I share those experiences with my own experiences with them. So what I try to do, sometimes there's phrases or sayings that I might not understand the way that they're meaning it. So I try to have them explain it to me. Teach me your culture, teach me your core values, teach me, your belief system. And teaching that to me, I want to use it as a strength. I want to use it as the core of your services. Because I don't want to push you into something I don't want to push you into anything. And I don't want to, push you into a modality for therapy that maybe goes against your own values or your own culture. So I try to really incorporate that and make them the agent of change in doing that.
Okay. So, you already mentioned that certainly there is a need for Spanish speaking therapists and providers. But what are the other services that, we need in our communities that we maybe don't have?
So we do need, again, from my experience working with youth, there's that disconnect and feeling like I am the only one because of the secrecy culture. So I think one program that would really, really be effective and beneficial to Latino youth in specific would be groups where, they do art, they do cooking classes, maybe if they're into music, they can write songs, they can create music, just something that makes them feel connected. And they also share their experiences with one another. I'm also thinking that early prevention programs, we do have some already in place and, they're implemented and they're doing really great. However, I think that specific to the Latino community, they're not being targeted as much. So I would suggest having more early prevention programs. Start talking to kids about mental health at an early age. Sometimes even just going to the store or going outdoors, you hear conversation as you're walking. And often I hear parents talking to their little kid, a little boy who fell and now he's crying, and don't cry, you gotta be a big boy. So in that, they're already suppressing their emotion of I'm hurt, and you see this and you don't really recognize it, that you are showing your kids to not talk about their feelings and just shut it up and grow up. Yeah. Another thing is, I think education in terms of psychoeducation, which comes in the therapy world. A lot of parents, whether it be of their educational level, their experiences, any other factors, they don't realize the damage that they're doing to their children. When in the Hispanic families, it's very common to refer to your children as, and I apologize if if anyone gets offended with the words, but as pendejo or estúpido or cabrón, güey. And you're doing it as a way to get their attention, like, hey, güey, ven pa' acá, and you're not recognizing that you're actually emotionally abusing your children by doing that, right? So then they grow up in this culture of it's okay and it's acceptable. Specifically to female Latinas, there's a risk for domestic violence in the relationships because they're learning that it's acceptable for the male figure to talk to you in a demeaning way. So I think a lot of that psychoeducation, the groups, and definitely easier access to services, to mental health services.
What services do you think are out there? Thank you, Arcelia. What service? It's just another reminder for us to take a breath and slow down. Yeah, see, Genesis has it. What services are out there that maybe aren't seen enough in the community?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think?
Yeah, so in mental health, we do have, specifically with Interface Children and Family Services, we treat trauma. So we get a lot of trauma referral cases, and trauma sometimes, trauma is defined differently for everyone. It could be from, my little pet passed away to big T that we call trauma. Right? So it's major changes in our life. But there's that intergenerational trauma as well. So having resources that target that would also be ideal. At Interface, we focus on that. We focus on the whole aspect of, what is that trauma that we're working on. We also, there's a modality that we have, it's called parent-child interaction therapy. And this interaction therapy modality, I really enjoy it because it's a way of creating security and a nurturing relationship between the child and the parent. So that's one program that we have here. Just, traditional therapy.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate it. So I want to open the conversation up to kind of all of our panelists now. I want to know, how do we come together to get what we need, within these communities and these families?
I think this is a great way, having these conversations and sharing our various experiences and the lived experiences of either our students, our clients, our colleagues, and coworkers. And I think, I'm learning things from this moment of hearing from everybody and the different perspectives everyone has. And it's kind of like putting a puzzle together and having a hard conversation, really hitting the hard realities that our youth are facing. So this is definitely one way for sure.
Yeah, if I may add also, holding spaces like this and not just acknowledging that we all come with our own experiences, right? But kind of having this, how do we start? As everybody was talking, I kind of just wrote down, something that I have learned in the position that I'm in is to have an open mind and to be patient. And I stress the being patient because we all come, or within this community there are so many barriers that sometimes there's this frustration, right? I'm a professional, I really want to help you, like how, like I have these resources, but if you don't communicate properly that you are there to understand and be patient and show your patience, I think that's something that's like part of step one, right? And the second part that I learned, and I apologize for kind of code switching for the interpreters, but something that we do is a plática de confianza. I think that those words are more impactful in Spanish because they hold a completely different meaning, but the translation is a talk within confidence. But it holds so much more because you build a connection. And whether that connection comes within 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour, when you build that confianza, that confidence, you can, that's where it starts to open up. So that definitely is something that I have learned, and then something that we can all take, when it gets on social media, when people, see this later, just communicate, be patient, be understanding.
Yes. I very much, I agree with the patience. It's definitely one of the things that I have learned in my position, along with creative problem solving and really going in, like Jessica said, looking at what are your values? What do you need? What do you want? And building that into programming and building that into how we offer programming. That, certainly has been a huge skill for me to learn and to work with. So how do we teach Teen Latinas, I bungled that, Teen Latinas self-advocacy and how to self-advocate? How do we go about that as a community?
I think it all begins at home. You're advocating for your own needs. So it begins as, being able to not only say I'm hungry or I'm thirsty or, your basic needs, but also your emotional needs, any other needs that you're having. So I think it all starts at our home. And sometimes that's a difficult, barrier to break because we're not used to that. So it takes a lot of, sometimes just seeing it on social media, which is, I think, everyone's world now for teens specifically is social media. So that would be another way of, starting this change and starting this conversation.
I would love to invite our guest artist Genesis to throw her 2 cents in anything that she's heard. I don't want to just keep you until the end.
It's all right. Coming from my personal experience as a Mexican American Chicanx person and as a queer person, mental health has a whole other level in the community because there are these strict gender rules. If you're someone like me who's considered gender fluid or gender non-conforming, that can be really difficult and add another layer of frustration, both in the household and in interactions with just people from the same culture. And then coming out, especially right now, is so difficult for so many people who rely on their family and who have to live with all of these people that they know have different ideas and different roles set to different genders and you know, this is your role. You were born as this, and I refuse to see you as anything other than this, even though that is no longer something that you are comfortable with or that serves you or that you identify with. So it's been a really difficult time for those things, but like everyone's been saying, social media has really been a great outlet for a lot of people to come together and to be able to have these conversations, for more and more people to get this type of information. Because I know that going to school didn't give me access to a lot of these resources about queerness and the proper language to use. Like, I wouldn't have known that you can use these pronouns or those pronouns and they're still grammatically correct. Like, that wasn't a conversation we had in English class. Or like with our health class, we thankfully did have a mental health portion of that health class. And we actually had someone from Interface come to my high school. I went to Channel Islands in Oxnard. We actually had someone come and speak to us and go, here's our services, here's what we do. This is how we want to interact and make sure that people know that these services are available. But there are other schools that don't have that. But now with the spread of social media, if, you know, people see this post and come to this event and learn, oh, I didn't know that was an option available in this community. Or if, you know, Interface does an event and there's something posted and like 100 people share it and that's seen by like another 100 people. It's really just been a great way for people to get to the information that they need the most, such as these mental health resources, such as these resources to get them in touch with other people in their community. For the longest time, my queer community was entirely online until I went to college. So it's really great that people are, when they're able to, can connect with those communities.
Thank you so much, Genesis. I think you're right. You know, knowing those resources and passing them on is so important. And a few minutes ago, Arcelia asked me to wrap up by talking about some of NAMI's resources. So I do want to talk to you about that because sorry, I'm talking so fast again. I keep like hiccuping in my head going, slow down. You know, we at NAMI, we not only support people who are living with mental health challenges, but we were fundamentally, at the very beginning, we were created by family members sitting around a kitchen table saying, what do I do? I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to approach this. So our programs, a lot of them are aimed at families, teaching families those skills that we just don't inherently grow up with. And we don't, you know, you don't go to kindergarten and learn, oh, well, this is what you do when your loved one has a psychotic episode or your loved one's depressed. So the one I want to talk about the most right now is called Family to Family. We do offer it in Spanish, monolingual and bilingual Spanish, as Familia Familia. It's a 12-week course, and it is taught by people who've been through it. They've been there. They are family members who care for other family members who have serious mental illness. And this class in particular covers, of course, the basic diagnosis education that we don't know. I mean, I think of it as basic because I live this and I work this, but in reality, most people can't tell you what the symptoms of depression actually are. Or they can't, you know, they think that if you're having anxiety, it must be because of something, like what happened. But we know that that's not really necessarily how anxiety works. So this class is a lot of work around diagnosis, around treatment. But what I think is even more important is it does a massive amount of work around communication skills. Because what we know is that when you're communicating with someone who has an active mental illness, you're not really communicating with that person. You're communicating with that illness, and it takes a different kind of communication. So that class is a lot around that. And I've really, I will use my own experience. I'll jump in. My husband took that class when we were still dating. And one of the things, that was one of the big things he learned, is that he needed to approach me differently when I was ill. And maybe sometimes he needed to wait to approach me. And I can honestly tell you, I don't think we would be married if he hadn't taken that class at all. I think we would have split up and gone our separate ways. But as it is, he took that class and he is an amazing support to me. And I definitely credit him with my success in recovery. So family to family, that's huge, that's massive. 12 weeks, but I also want to mention 12 weeks is a long time, right? You're like, oh, 12-week class, that sounds like a lot. We have other programs. We have a program which is newer to NAMI. It came on board about 2 years ago, called Family and Friends. It's a 2.5-hour class. I like to call it family to family ultralight. It's all the same broad topics, like just really smushed down. And it's a great introduction, especially for people who might be nervous or might not want to accept that, you know, my child is experiencing depression. And it's also taught by our people who teach family to family. So I think that's really important, as well as our new community cares class. That is one where it's taught by one person who is what we call a peer, somebody living in recovery with a mental health condition, and a family member. And it really does that basic introduction to mental health. And what we're seeing from that is people coming in and they're hearing our presenter stories, they're getting the basic information, and they're going, oh, that sounds kind of familiar. Oh, I see that in somebody else. And it's setting them up to break down stigma and break down those barriers. We do a lot of talk in that class about stigma and what stigma looks like. I recently had somebody contact me after the class and say, I didn't realize that at Halloween, the haunted asylum, the scary asylum was actually, you know, stigmatizing. Which was amazing because in my mind, it's sort of a no-brainer, but that was this person's input to me. So I want to encourage you to reach out to NAMI, to have your clients, your friends, your family, your colleagues, everybody. We take everybody. We love everybody. To have them reach out to NAMI. Our website is www.namiventura.org. All of our classes are there. We are expanding our classes in Spanish as well. Which I'm so excited about. That's my big 2021 push. And I think I covered it all, even if I was speaking really fast. All right, so I wanna hand it back to Arcelia.
Gracias, Kimberly. Muchas gracias igual a todos por estar aquí. Ahorita vamos a dejar 10 minutos para que nuestros invitados en la audiencia le hagan las preguntas que ustedes quieren a los invitados, a los panelistas. Si se sienten un poco tímidos, pueden mandarnos sus preguntas anónimamente a Carolina o a mí y nosotras las haremos en sus nombres o por parte suya. Así que ustedes les toca a preguntar cualquier curiosidad que tengan para nuestros invitados. Jessica Roman, Genesis Perez, Liliana Manriquez, Kimberly Quinn, Talisa Hale, o Carolina o a mí. No hay que darles pena, lo que ustedes quieran. Bien, vamos a ver los comentarios, a ver si alguien se animó a hacer una pregunta. Revisen sus chats.
I'm curious if any of the panelists have questions for the other panelists too.
I have a question for Genesis. Genesis, I would love to hear what you would say to, say, a 12-year-old Latina, a 13-year-old Latina. What message do you have for them?
Well, a lot of us have been using ourselves as examples, so I feel very comfortable also doing that. When I was 12 years old, I think that's where I first started having really intense periods of suicidal ideation and just having these really intense periods of time where I just did not feel well. And I couldn't quite name it and I couldn't quite describe it. And there was a lot of emotional turmoil going on at home. And I also didn't feel safe at all at school. So that was a really turbulent time for me. And I would absolutely love to tell anyone who's going through that age, but especially young Latinas, because that's a really uncomfortable time, because that's when people start looking at you as a young woman when you're a child. And I would just love to tell, you know, young Latinos that you don't have to feel pressured to grow up or to be anything that you're not comfortable to be yet. And that it may be hard to feel comfortable in your skin. And if there's something that doesn't feel right, tell somebody. Because if it doesn't make you feel right, it probably isn't. So whether it's, I feel really, really sad and upset all of the time, and it's not something that I can just put on some happy music or I can watch a funny movie and suddenly I magically feel better. It's a deep sadness, tell somebody. If going into a classroom makes you want to cry every single morning and the idea of presenting makes you just want to curl up into a ball and disappear forever, tell someone. If the boys in your class or the men in your family are looking at you or starting to speak to you a certain way that just gets under your skin and makes you feel dirty, tell someone. Because those are all things that I had to deal with at that age. And thankfully, I was able to speak out to somebody and get some mental health resources through my school. Was it enough to take those feelings away forever? No. Or was it enough to permanently heal that trauma that every day I have to work through? No. But it helped me get through that experience, and I'm able to sit here and tell other people to tell someone so that you can also get through that experience.
Thank you so much. I love that. That's one of the things I tell people too. Tell someone. If they don't listen, tell someone else. If they don't listen, keep going. Keep going until you find the person who listens.
Eso quería agregar yo, que aparte de decirle a alguien, como dijo Genesis, que es muy importante, a veces tenemos que tomar ese momento y averiguar a quién se le puede decir, porque no a cualquiera persona se puede comunicar lo que está pasando, por lo mismo de que son humanos. Y a lo mejor ellos tienen miedo por ti, a lo mejor ellos están, como dicen, están enojados de lo que está pasando porque están frustrados. Entonces, aparte de decirle a alguien, es muy, muy importante uno saber con quién confiar. Porque a veces estamos en un momento muy difícil y esa persona, no hay culpa de ellos, pero no pueden ayudarte porque ellos no entienden, no están abiertos, ellos mismos están sufriendo algo. Entonces, es importante saber con quién vamos a confiar ciertas cosas. Muy bien, seguimos. Si quieren hacer preguntas entre ustedes de un invitado a otro, de nuestra audiencia, alguna pregunta que quieran hacer, nos pueden mandar un mensaje privado. En lo que alguien se anima, quiero recordarles que el próximo salón que vamos a tener va a ser en marzo y ya estuve anotando cosas y preguntas para ese porque este tiene que ver en marzo 20 vamos a tener nuestro salón vamos a ver de las formas de tratamiento, que es el moderno y el tradicional o antiguo. Nos encantaría que nos acompañen y que les digan a todas sus familiares y amistades, porque es muy importante, ¿verdad? Asesorar qué nos puede ayudar dependiendo de lo que es el tratamiento. Así que, ¿alguien tiene alguna pregunta? Seguimos con las preguntas, otros 3 minutos.
Can I make a plug? So I'm very just moved by everyone's stories and testimonies and lived experience. And, you know, thank you for sharing that so openly with us on this Zoom. You know, here at the Oxnard Performing Arts Center, we're going through some, okay, slow. Yes. We're going through some growth and some changes, and it's exciting. So we, with Arcelia, have these monthly art programs for teenagers. So if anyone knows someone who could just use something fun and diverting and some communication too, I think those have been really neat. We've done everything from jewelry making with Maribel. She makes really cool stuff. We're doing plantita gardening, indoor little small plant gardening next week. So those happen once a month, and they usually have some sort of kind of Latinx theme, I think, and some really great female role models involved. So I love that project. We've also gotten some new grants to fund visual art programs for teenagers. That's going to start, I haven't even announced it, but it will start we'll announce it next week. But those are going to be free art classes for teenagers. So someone had mentioned One Step a la Vez, and I'm a huge fan of what they're doing. And if we could be that here in Oxnard, I would just be a very happy camper. So please just check our website, join our mailing list at oxnardperformingarts.com to follow all of those updates. But I definitely want us to be a resource, I think, for teenagers. It's a very special time, you know, and I think I'm excited to open those creative pathways. You know, I think someone on the call today mentioned, you know, how important the arts were, I think, and I don't think that can be undervalued. I really do think they're instrumental to all of our lives.
I just want to say out loud, somebody had asked in the chat about NAMI programs and about the cost. All of our programs, all of them are completely free to every participant. Mental health, education, support access is so important. It's very close to my heart. So that's really something I love about NAMI. Everything is free. Yeah. Free is good.
Claro, claro que sí. Les recuerdo lo que estaba diciendo Carolina de los grupos que son mensuales que se llaman Sinvergüenza Charlas. Ahorita todavía tenemos 2 espacios, así que si ustedes conocen a una latina adolescente que quiera participar, con que puedan recoger su kit de materiales, estamos todavía disponibles para 2 muchachitas más. La charla va a ser este miércoles, el 27 de este mes, a las 6:30, para que se inscriban o les manden el flyer. Me van a regañar las intérpretes. Para que les manden el boletín, o pueden ir a nuestra página oxnardperformingarts.com y buscar el proyecto Esperanza y agarrar ahí el boletín. Todavía tenemos espacios. Muy bien. Todavía seguimos en preguntas. Les doy 30 segundos. ¿Alguien más? Parece que estamos un poquito tímidos hoy. Okay. Bueno.
Tenía una pregunta del boletín que acabas de mencionar. ¿Dónde podemos recoger el boletín?
Pueden ir a la página de oxnardperformingarts.com.
Ok, gracias.
Y bajo la página Programs, buscar The Esperanza Project.
Ok, gracias.
Sí, y allí pueden ver todos los eventos que tenemos, incluyendo la charla, y de ahí pueden registrarse o mandarle el enlace a alguien que esté interesado.
Ok, gracias.
Gracias. Muy bien. Bueno, antes de que se nos vayan todos, porque se nos olvidó decirles que tenemos rifas, porque ya se han ido muchos, entonces a lo mejor no quieren regalo. Lo bueno es que incluimos en la rifa a nuestros invitados porque el negocio que nos regaló las cosas from Mex to You nos dieron bastante, así que ustedes van a ser parte de la rifa. Les deseo a todos una buena suerte. Antes de hacer la rifa, quiero dar las gracias a los patrocinadores: California Arts Council, the Port of Hueneme, Mechanics Bank, Clínicas del Camino Real, Vista del Mar, and Downtown Oxnard Lions Club. Y también darle las gracias a nuestros amigos, a los negocios que nos han apoyado y patrocinado, por ejemplo, en haciendo regalos para las rifas. Interface, NAMI, MyCup, Bright Youth, Bridging Voices por todos sus servicios, Heritage Succulents, Hoja de mi Corazón, La Chica Glam, Monarca Box y, como mencioné, uno de los regalos que vamos a tener de From Mex to You. Así que quiero revisar si Tania ya está lista para hacer las rifas. Cuando ella me diga que sí, lo empezamos.
Sí, estoy lista, pero me podrán dar sharing privileges.
Oh, sí. Muy bien. En lo que le dan permiso a Tania que comparta su pantalla con nosotros. ¿Alguien más lo que quiera preguntar? ¿O un comentario que quieran hacer? Yo por mi parte le doy unas gracias muy grandes a todos ustedes, a los invitados que estuvieron con nosotros hoy por darnos su tiempo y su experiencia. Ok, lista. Tania, ¿ya te lo dieron?
Sí.
Ok. Muy bien.
¿Pantalla?
Muy bien.
Sí. Lo voy a hacer shuffle unas veces.
This is so cool.
El primer regalo, que es From Mex to You. Now I'm going to switch in English. The first gift that we are giving away is a cute 3 succulent plants. And it comes together in a little bag. Let's see who gets it.
Okay.
Oh. Talisa, great. Felicidades.
I am a plant person, so this is like the best day ever. Thank you. And I never won anything, so this is great. Thank you.
Felicidades. Okay. The next thing we're giving away is apparently I'm not too much of a plant person, but it's a water container thingy with the nozzle.
A watering can.
A watering can. I gave myself away with a pair of gardening gloves.
Ooh. Okay.
Muy bien, Lena. Congratulations. Por todo el trabajo que las hicimos hacer, de hacer la interpretación muy rápido. And then things like this when I switch languages. My apologies. Okay, next gift. This is a bag of toys also donated from Mex to You. Let's see who's the lucky winner. Jessica, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next one is going to be from the business who is sponsoring this month's charla, Hoja de mi Corazón. It is a little white, already all white terracotta plant that you can paint yourself. So let's see, it's a container. Let's see who wins.
And for those of you who don't know that business, they're in the collection in Oxnard in the Annex Hall. Yeah. And they're super adorable.
They're the best.
Yay,
I love
Karina.
them.
Yay! Okay, I want to make sure everybody's I think everybody was here, yes?
Mm.
I believe, okay. Beautiful, and then our very last one, I know you'll love this. This is by another business who has donated to us, La Chica Glam. She is a 19-year-old college student with her own business, and this is lip gloss in the shape of a popsicle. They're super cute. I will send pictures. Let's see who gets it. Yay, Liliana, congratulations.
Gracias.
Gracias, gracias. So I want to invite everybody, thank you so much for being here, and I want to invite you at 3:30 to stay on with us and chat with Genesis. If you got her links ahead of time to her 2 performances, she's going to share with us what that journey was like to put her art out there, to perform it, to write about it, write about her life and experiences. This is the end of our salon. We thank you so much to each of you for being here. Please continue to support us and spread the word about our programs. We'll see you on the next salon on March 20th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Let's start the Q&A. Thank you so much, you guys, for staying with us. I'm excited to talk with Genesis about your performances that we sent ahead of time and that we were able to see. First off, I'd love to, let you take the floor, kind of reintroduce yourself, so we know who you are, but for anyone who watches this later, and just give a brief explanation of the 2 performances that we saw.
So my name is Genesis Perez. I use they, them pronouns, and I write a lot about my experiences as a queer person, as a Chicanx person, and the intersections between that and various aspects of mental health and mental health awareness. And so the 2 pieces that I wanted to display today, or I guess yesterday, if that's when you watch them, was probably one of my favorite things that I've ever written, which is a poem called A Jury of My Peers, which that particular performance was from May 2019. And also I write zines, and that was what I read in the second performance. And for those who aren't familiar with that word, because I know it tends to confuse people, some people call it zine when they've only read it, but a zine is just a homemade magazine, essentially, and it can be about anything from poetry to photography to activism. And I just wanted to write about growing up and some of the better things about growing up, as well as getting to grow into the person that you want to be, which I think is really important, because a lot of people want us to grow up to, I want you to go, be a doctor, or I want you to be a loving housewife, and that's not what we want to be or what is the best for us. So getting to grow into a place where you go, I'm really proud with where I am, is really important. So that's what I wrote about. And I just enjoy writing, and it's always been an outlet for me to talk about things involving my mental health that I might not have been able to just blatantly say. Mm-hmm. And it's also just been like a good activity for me to explore a certain feeling without necessarily having to go to mental health services or raising eyebrows, essentially.
Thank you for sharing that. They were lovely, great, inspiring. They were all of these things as I was watching them, and definitely laughing at the zine about the chicken legs. I had my own nicknames, right? We all kind of, and then you try to outgrow them, and then sometimes it just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So I'll open it up for anyone else who might have a question for you regarding your performances. Oh, thank you, Carolyn. You put it on the chat. Perfect. Yeah. Before I ask you, I'll let other people ask. Oh, okay, perfect. So you put the other one. Yes. Yeah.
Well, you're so incredibly well spoken, right? You exuberate all this confidence, and I mean, have you always had that, or is that something? I mean, tell us about that.
For most of my life, I would say people have always asked me like, oh, what do you want to do with your life? And when I was really little, I was dead set on being a paleontologist. Like from the ages of 2 to 14, I wanted to be a paleontologist. But whenever I told people that, oh, a paleontologist is someone who studies ancient life. You might think of them as people who dig up dinosaur bones. And that is something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to dig up dinosaurs and ancient seashells and look at different types of rocks and when they were created in using carbon dating.
Wow.
I'm a jack of all trades, but I would tell people, oh, I want to be this. And they'd go, you don't want to be an actor? You sure? You sure? You sure? But yeah, I've just always been that kid that raises their hand first to give a presentation. Tanya and I went to high school together, one of our techs, and she probably remembers that I was literally singing in the hallways every day, unless I had a horrible cold. Because I'm just very out there, and I own that about myself. And it's just kind of always been that way.
That's beautiful. That's a great way of being. I wanted to just kind of, comment right on kind of where you're going, because I remember I believe it was you, correct me if I'm wrong, who was telling me that you're studying tourism.
Yes.
Was it you, or did I get it wrong? Yes. So then for me to like see someone, like you say, be a certain way where you think they're going to go one route and then they're going the other, that to me was kind of a shock, because the people I grew up around were what they were. They were outside what they were inside. But I feel like it's so much sweeter to be able to have that dynamic, and that you can just kind of be who you are, and you throw people off, but that's a good thing, right? But in a great way. So I want to know kind of how people react to you that way, and how do you receive that when people react to you different? Oh, you're this way, but you don't want to be like this, right? How do you cope with that?
Well, I would like to say that I love acting. That is something that I do. Yeah. And people were very shocked that that's not what I studied in college. Well, currently studying, I guess. Mm-hmm. I just feel like I'm almost done, so I refer to it in the past tense. But that's because I can't. One of my financial limitations is that I can't afford to take that extra year or that 2 years to get that extra degree. Mm-hmm. I do not have the space in my schedule to take those extra credits, unfortunately. But I'm involved with community theater, but I'm involved with theater on campus. So a lot of people have this misconception that, oh, you're studying this because this is what you want to be, and you don't want to be that other thing at all. And it's like, no, I'm studying tourism and recreation and all this stuff. But if like my job ends up being like on the boat entertainment in a cruise, I will not complain because I like attention. That being said, I've been fully aware my whole life that there are people who just cannot stand me. I do know that my really out there and very confident personality tends to throw people off and turn them away from me. And I'm fully okay with that, frankly. I think something that I've learned growing up is not only that you're not going to please everyone, but why try to please people that you're not going to when there are so many other people who love you for who you are and enjoy being around you. So I've just made sure to like really focus on appreciating the people that I have close to me and appreciating the people who are going to support me versus trying to cater to everyone else, because a lot of those people don't really matter to me as much to me.
Got it. And that's absolutely true. We have to remember that, you know, as long as we each have our support system, and that's going to look different for everybody, then you're set, you're okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
And for a lot of people, because this is a term that I hear a lot in the queer community, is having a chosen family. Like these are the people that I choose to be the closest to me in a family like this is my family now. But I feel like everybody should use that term, because there are just so many people whose families are unsupportive of their goals or their dreams or their sexuality or their gender or their career. And it's like, there are some issues that you can really like sit with a therapist and talk it out, but unfortunately there are some people who are like, this is the hill I will die on. It goes, okay, don't know what to tell you there. So I just love that as humans we can build a family unit out of literally anyone, and we can create these support systems that are the best for us and the best for each other.
I would love to pass a phrase on to you. Somebody gave this to me because I am a person who disowned my family and had to build a new one. And so this person said to me when I was talking to him about it, he said, "Oh, you have a logical family outside your biological family." And I was just like, that is the most brilliant phrase ever. Because yes, that's what it is. It's a logical family. Yeah.
That's a good one. I think I'm going to implement.
Yeah.
I love the message that Tanya just wrote. She says, Jen would always brighten my days during zero period in high school. That's so sweet. I'm so glad to hear that. Because we don't know, you know, who we affect. I don't know if she's ever said that to you or if you knew that, Genesis. But we, just by accepting who we are and being ourselves, like you said, you just kind of do your thing, and without even knowing it, you're affecting other people, and I'm pretty sure inspiring them too.
I hope so.
She said she still has an amazing energy.
I have
any
I was just gonna say I have too much energy.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, some people don't have any, so that's how we balance the world.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to ask you a question. Forgive me if I, wasn't paying attention. So the reading you did for the high school, was that your first time, second, one of many?
That was pretty far along in my slam poetry. I guess you could almost start calling it a career now, because I do, I'm the Youth Poet Laureate for Ventura County. I also do.
I didn't know that. Congrats. That's awesome. That's very cool.
One of my very close friends that I've met through poetry is going to get inaugurated very soon as the next one. Oh. So I'm super excited and proud of her. Her name is Angelina Llanos. She is absolutely incredible and amazing, and I adore her. And we both competed at that competition. We had competed the year previous to that. And we had actually been in competition with each other for a very long time. And I think a lot of people instantly assumed, oh, here's these two young Latino women who are, constantly being put up against each other. They probably hate each other. Mm-hmm. And we're real close, because we're like, no one else remembers being in that competition in our shoes and the pressures that we specifically were under. So we're really close. She's helping me out a lot, because we are both coaching for Poetry Out Loud, which is done through the Poetry Foundation. And it's this really large poetry recitation competition that a lot of local schools participate in. So this is my first year doing it, so she's helping me out a lot, and I really appreciate that. But that competition at the high school, going back to the reading, the year prior, I made it to the finals, but I didn't place in the top 3 for that competition. And I've won almost every single poetry slam that I've done.
Nice.
So that experience, it didn't like crush me and break me down, but it really did make me think the next year when it came around, like, am I really ready for this? Am I going to perform the best that I possibly can at this competition? And I've worked my butt off on that poem. I worked my butt off on that performance. And back to our logical family, I'm very close with my stepfather, and then I have a relationship with my father that can get a bit complicated, but for the most part, we really are trying to focus on our mental health, because that is something that we've both struggled with, which has put a rift between us. You know, when you have 2 people who are constantly struggling with anxiety, who are living in very, very close quarters, there can be a lot of friction. So now that we don't live with each other and we're both actively talking to therapists and getting the help that we need, we've gotten a lot better and a lot closer. Neither of them were there, but I invited this really close friend that I act with, who is old enough to be my father, who was there, and he was kind of like my father figure in support at that competition. So I had everything I needed. I had my practice, I had my support system from Angelina and from my friend Bill and from my coaches. And I won that year. I got first place, so I was really happy. And that's why that performance and that piece is probably one of my favorite things I've ever written, because you know, being a creative but also being competitive is really hard, because if you're too competitive, you can unfortunately drive other people who are also creatives away from you, especially if you have a lot of insecurities and constantly feel the need to compare yourself to other people. So it can be a really beautiful and awesome community if you make sure to give back to that community as much as you can. So that poem, the title is A Jury of My Peers, because I eventually read that as my final piece when I was becoming poet laureate. That was the piece that I decided to submit. And I knew that I would be reading that piece in front of all of these other poets who I admired and who I thought were really just absolutely incredible people. And I was like, okay, this is it. The people who know my art the best are going to judge me. And that's kind of where that name came from. And the story behind that performance and why it's my favorite that I've probably done in forever.
That's so awesome to hear all of that and your journey through it, right? Can I ask about what your thoughts are about the, what's her name?
Amanda Gorman.
Yes, no one's talking about.
So, I didn't watch the inauguration because I had to go get a COVID test.
Okay.
So I had to get up really early, I don't drive yet, and my family wasn't home, so I had to take the bus, and I had to walk to the COVID site only to find out that it had been canceled. So then I had to wait an hour to walk and take the bus again. Oh. So I missed the whole dang thing.
Okay.
All day, everybody was texting me, did you see the poet? Did you see the poet? Did you see the poet? This is where it gets a little weird. I've met her. And she's actually helped me edit some of my pieces way back. I have a poster signed by her. She is an absolute sweetheart and a beautiful, wonderful person, like in real life. So everyone was texting me about Amanda, and I was just like, and then I would just respond with, yeah, I met her, she's awesome. People were like freaking out. They were like, why had you never told us this? And I'm like, I did. It's just a lot of people didn't know how awesome she was before. So seeing her get all of this recognition, especially as, you know, a young Black woman, and we're having much better conversations about race relations and racism and racial injustices that are happening in this country, her getting the recognition that she deserves for her work is so important, and it makes me so incredibly happy because she's great.
She does seem like such a lovely, sweet, you know, just genuine person. I saw some of the interviews. I didn't see the inauguration myself, but I went back and I watched like the highlights, and that's how I knew about her. And I honestly, who was I telling? Somebody was telling me yesterday, you know, they were crying at the end of it. I'm like, okay, so it wasn't just me. Like, I was like, something happened. I was, you know, fine, leading the normal day, getting ready for things. And I watch it, and all of a sudden I find myself like crying in the bathroom as I'm brushing my teeth. I'm like, what is happening? Like, I was fine. But I realized it was just the power that this young woman has in her words and the way she was using them. And I went, oh my God, like, okay, you know, that we don't give words enough credit.
So I want to bring this up. I don't get choked up easily, but Genesis, you actually had me starting to get choked up earlier when you started talking about tell somebody. I public speak in mental health a lot. I don't get choked up, but you had me. I was doing my, okay, tongue to the roof of the mouth. You're not going to cry. You're not going to do it. But that's the power of words. And I'm so incredibly bowled over by you today. I'm really excited to be able to meet you.
Thank you so much.
I'm
really appreciate that.
I'm gonna kind of ask, you know, we have a self-care Sundays in our Esperanza project program. And I know that you would be someone that the audience would benefit from hearing speak. So I'm just gonna throw that out now. If you would like to be one of our guests, I'll contact you after for that. But we need more, you know, young, strong, powerful women like you on there to speak to our audiences. This is amazing. So what's in the works for you? What are you working on? What's going on? I know with school online and all of this adjusting, but what's next? What's going on with you? We want to know so we can follow you, tell us where to follow you and how to keep track of you and support you.
So I have Instagram. That's where I'm most active on. It's Panic versus Euphoria. Don't make your profile name when you're 12. But yeah, so it's just all one big block of word, and that's where you can follow me on Instagram. That's where I post the most. And then I'm also Panic versus, because YouTube is smart, it made me put a space and then Euphoria. So I don't know if you can tell, I like words. So if something sounds good to me, I will use it, whatever. But you can follow me on YouTube as well. I post my performances. I'm gonna start doing more zine readings and zine tours because I have about 4 now with a range of topics. And then I do also have a zine that I sell digital versions of, and then I usually donate all the proceeds to charity. I just haven't done that one in a while. But I've donated to the LGBTQ Freedom Fund a couple of times, which is a really great organization that pays bail for LGBTQ people, but specifically focuses on people who may be undocumented who are being held, people who are Black, Indigenous, people of color. They really want to try to make sure that those people have their bail paid. And then I also am publishing my first book soon. It'll be called Flash Photography. We're trying to get it out as soon as possible. So follow me for updates about that, because that'll be happening in March, February, right in there, just in time for my birthday. So I'm really excited because I am very afraid of people reading my writing. I would much rather someone see me perform it. But one of the great things about reading poetry is that you get to take what you need from it.
Mhm.
And I spoke with one of my other friends, and she was like, well, if you die tomorrow and your book is the only thing ever published, what is the one thing that you want people to take away from it? And I went, whatever they need. What if you read a poem of mine and go, this gives me the strength to talk about my sexual assault? That's what I want. If you read one of those poems and you go, this gives me the strength to speak out against injustices that I'm seeing in my community, that's what I want. Because you can take whatever you want or need from poetry or from literature, and I just really hope that audiences and people who read it and people who have conversations with me take what they need from any conversation or interaction. That's the same with my writing.
That's wonderful. You're so courageous and bold, right, to do that. And we thank you for all the work that you do, because we need it. We need more voices like yours out there, inspiring and changing one letter at a time. This is amazing.
Very weird word at a time. Love words.
I love it. I love it. Well, I feel like I want to wrap it up. I am so thankful for you. Thank you for staying with us for the Q&A. Everybody else who stayed, thank you so much. This was amazing. So we hope to see you next time. ABC, thank you for joining us. Bridging Voices, thank you so much for all of your services. Kimberly, again, we appreciated your wonderful moderating. I don't think I could have nailed that like the way you did. This was beautiful. Thank you so much. Jocelyn, our tech assistants, you were great. Thank you so much. And keep following us, the Esperanza Project on the Oxnard Performing Arts Center. We hope that you follow us, join us on our next salon, sign up for a charla, join us on a self-care Sunday at 7 p.m. through our Instagram page. We're here, we want to hear from you. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everybody.